Hey everybody, how you doing out there? It's your boy from Brooklyn, Shannon Ambrosio, just saying it's Sunday. It's fun day. It is another episode of the Everything and Nothing podcast, folks. It is Sunday, and what's today's date, Denise?
September 15th.
That's what's up right there. It's going to be a wonderful Sunday. The weather outside is amazing. The sun is shining, and it's so bright outside, my mama calls me Sunny. So how is everybody today? We are getting ready for another Everything and Nothing podcast. And on today's podcast, I have an amazing group of people that are called the NJ Podcasters. Am I correct?
Yes, Podcasters in New Jersey's in the house. Woo!
That's what's up right there. So today we're going to be talking about how to host a podcast, how to be on a podcast, and what it takes to have a podcast, which I'm very excited about because I joined this group here, found you guys on Facebook, and I was like, New Jersey Podcasters. And since I'm residing here in the NJ state now, your boy from Brooklyn does live in NJ, folks. I needed a big house. I couldn't afford the shoebox in Brooklyn. So I moved out here, and I absolutely love it. And I had to get part of something that I'm very passionate about now. And where else to do that but the place that I live? And Denise is the curator. She is the queen of podcasting. If she needs an introduction, I'm telling you folks out there, you haven't done enough research on podcasting. Come out to NJ, see Denise, tell them what's going on.
Yeah, that's a lot of responsibility, right? The queen of podcasting. But yeah, I started this group back in March. And the reason I started Podcasters of New Jersey was because, like, you know, Shannon mentioned, and we have our members here. We have Ruth, we have Ariel and Steven. There was not enough New Jersey podcast hubs. What I mean by that is that everything that you hear, everything's always in New York City. So I said, come on, I'm from New Jersey. I've done podcasting. I do operations for the Love Zone USA. I help book the shows, do the production. Shout out to the Love Zone. And I wanted to get people together who had questions, who needed to see people face to face and needed resources and just wanted to say, hey, you know what? Have you ever had this type of guest? Oh, you know what? What equipment do you use? Do you use a Yeti mic too? Just things that you can talk to someone face to face, and it's just easy to get to know each other and network and do a community. So that's why I started the Podcasters in New Jersey, and you know, the group started back in March 2019. It's gonna be 6 months. Yay, 6 months this month. Woo, 6 months.
That's what's up right there, Denise.
And I have 67 members on my meetup. And in total, my Facebook was about 40. It's growing. And I usually have, I would say, about 15 people on meetup. 15 to 20, depending if we have a guest or just, you know, I have a lot of regulars. Shout out to you guys that are here today who come to the meeting monthly. Shannon is one of them. And James, shout out to James. And it's just a good place to just find out information. I educate myself while I'm educating others, and we all network and learn from each other and exchange and kind of barter for resources as well. So that's why, you know, I started the podcast in New Jersey, and I'm here because of it. So,
and thank you very much. The idea is, for me as well, when I found out about the group, was more of a thing like, wow, I want to find a place that I can share my ideas and maybe learn a little bit and understand why everybody is into this craze about podcasting. I mean, we all have something to say. I mean, that's the fact. That's the reason I started this, was because I always and truly still believe that everybody has a voice and should be heard. And you should be able to say whatever you want, basically whenever you want and how you want it. And I mean, I really enjoy the idea of a group working on things together. And that was the reason why I was drawn to the NJ Podcasters. And giving somebody the ability that they can learn about it without getting overwhelmed and what have you, you know, by learning from other people that do podcasting. Right. So very, very important. I know Steven has...
That's me.
Yes, has had some great insight as to like marketing for podcasting and so on and so forth. So without further ado, the man who has the plan, and believe me when I tell you, he plans it all. Shit. One day at a time, sometimes a week, sometimes a month. But I'm telling you, next year, he may not be doing the same thing. Without further ado, my man, Steven.
How you doing?
And that's PH, baby.
That's Steven with a PH. Get it right.
Tell him what's going on, Stephen.
Get it right. Yeah, so I'm Stephen Longsworth. This is introduction time, right?
Yes.
All right, yeah.
If you want it to be.
Okay, cool. I'm CEO of Scriptertainment. Look that up. Not so shameless plug.
No, be shameless, please.
No, I have no shame in it. Plug.
Yes.
Scriptertainment. Look us up. But I'm a member of Podcasters of New Jersey. I joined pretty much in support of Denise and the people running it. But as I've come to support, I definitely learned as well. I've been fortunate to be one of the guests.
Yes.
And I taught,
and a very good guest.
Thank you.
Very
I taught
good
a
guest.
session on social media advertising for all of the podcasters there to take a look at and focus on using social media to advertise their podcast and reach the right people for the audience, based on what their podcast is about. And we pretty much went over how to do advertising on Facebook, but with the understanding that you can expand that to Twitter and LinkedIn and YouTube, Instagram, and just use these platforms that you're on every day. By putting a little bit of money behind what you're already doing, you can expand your growth, pretty significantly, and your reach pretty significantly by just investing, a few dollars at a time.
It's not even expensive.
Yeah, the barrier to entry is very low. It's not like taking out a TV commercial
or a print ad.
Which
nobody does.
Yeah, I remember, in the 90s, I was doing music management and we were looking at buying print ad space, and you're talking about $10K, $15K
Easy.
for half a page, in the source or something like that.
One time.
Right? One time.
Right.
With this, you can start with not $15K, you can take $150.
Not even.
Right?
I mean, let's talk about
get it going.
Yeah, let's talk about the lowball idea of social media. So first of all, the idea of what we're doing by podcasting is basically social media. This is digital. All of this is digital. So in other words, if you're not trying to market yourself digitally on these platforms like Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and so on and so forth, you're losing views, you're losing let's say subscribers and so on and so forth.
You're leaving a lot on the table.
A lot on the table. And because this is done digitally now, right? I mean, basically, we don't have to be on television anymore. You want to create something, a podcast, I don't care what it is, even a television show, it doesn't make a difference what it is. If you're not using social media at your disposal, which is absolutely free because we all use it every single day, and if you're not advertising through it, you're really leaving money on the table.
Yeah, you're leaving a lot on the table, a lot of opportunity. So, that's kind of what I've done at Podcasters in New Jersey. I mean, I love the group. I anticipate, somebody from that group blowing up, right? Everyone's going to have different degrees of success, but we anticipate, somebody to go all the way, right? And that's a hard statement for me to make because it's not belittling anyone for whatever amount of listeners they have or how many episodes they do. It's just making the point that when you get that type of group of people together and do that kind of work, someone is bound to, get to the highest heights.
And Denise, thank you, because that's the reason you have the group, for the support.
Absolutely. And I wanted to thank Newark Venture Partners, where I usually host my meetup. Shout out to Anthony Frazier.
It's a nice spot.
It's a nice spot that he gives me space to have all of us together, and share ideas and also do resources. This month coming up, I'm going to have the meetup in another space. Oh. It's going to be at Third Space, which is a co-working space in Newark. It's on Lafayette Ave. And they have a podcasting studio, and they have a lot of different offices for people who need a co-working space or want to run their business from there, and they have different pricing. So shout out to them for letting us come in there. And with me doing the group, I've gotten opportunities to speak in other panels. I've gotten free tickets to other events. It's been, a work in progress, but I'm very proud and very grateful for you guys coming, because it's so many different avenues, you know, to touch on what you guys were talking about with ads and just social media and how expensive. You think about radio sponsorships. Now, I remember we were looking up different pricing, and there's stations obviously like Hot 97, 105.1. Depending on the time that they play a commercial, you're paying $800 to maybe $1,500.
30-second slot.
30-second slot. With podcasting, you guys have the opportunity, which we always talk about, doing one-on-one sponsorship, doing local businesses that you can do a pre-roll, which is in the beginning of the show, announce it, and a mid-roll in the middle of the show, and then a post-roll, and get paid for it. Right? And do it cheaper than what a national radio like Hot 97, and get worldwide web play, because it's everywhere.
And that's what the great thing about this too is that they're dealing directly with you, right?
Right.
So there's no third parties involved. So the idea, if somebody wants to advertise and they want you to advertise for them on your podcast, they're paying you directly. Nobody else touches your money. And the idea that you're the direct contact. So in other words, somebody has to call you, and then they're like, hey, dig your podcast. Or you reach out to somebody and say, hey, I have a podcast. I would love to have you be a sponsor on my podcast. I'll do an intro ad, or, you know, mid or end. And they deal directly with you. You make your own pricing, your own schedule. You decide how you do it. I love that idea. I love the idea of podcasting and doing this. For me, it's the live broadcasting, but it gives me the opportunity to create my own content, right?
Right.
And that brings me to our next amazing guest here, Ariel. She is.
Hi. Happy Sunday, y'all.
She got to turn her mic down. That's what you got to do immediately. So the idea that she has a wonderful smile and the bright sunshiny to match the sunshine today. Don't turn down my mic, James. You hear me?
I can't receive my.
All right. So she needs an introduction. So everybody knows who the star is in the room. Let's give it up. Whoop, whoop, for Ariel and her podcast. Tell everybody.
Hey guys, happy Sunday again. My name is Ariel Ryan. I am the co-host of the Millennial Her podcast.
Her.
Yes, Millennial Her. That is spelled MILLENNIHER podcast. So you can follow us on Instagram. You know, I'm following Steven with the shameless, not so shameless plug.
You have to plug. That's right. This is our opportunity. This is what we do, correct?
Correct. So yes, we started our podcast top of 2019. We are actually currently in production for season 2. So we're on Apple, Spotify, etc. Like, you can literally follow us. I mean, you can literally listen to us on any streaming platform. But my background, I'm an on-camera personality as well as journalist and producer. I've mostly worked with like Page 6 TV, NBC, ABC. I freelance basically, so like I have a job until I don't have a job, and then it's on to the next.
I love your schedule.
Yeah, right. You know, it's busy and then it's free. Yeah,
hurry up and weight gain.
But in any other like, I don't really think the world. I'm sidebarring right now. I don't really think the world is ready for a freelance lifestyle just based off of just working. They're like, oh, if you don't work all year round, how are you going to pay for this? So we could get into that today. But my point
that's a great idea for a podcast, though.
It's like, come on, we're millennials, and this is things that my podcast talks about as millennial issues. We like to say that we're the blueprint for like-minded bosses on the rise. So that is our little staple. But yeah, so I've been around the block, and I love to talk about all things entertainment. And also, I try to dig into the harder news as well, which I'm trying to get more familiar with. But if you got any tea that is worth spilling, you can come and find it out at the Millennial Her podcast. But thank you guys. Thank you, Shannon, for having me.
It is my pleasure.
And shout out to my co-host, Cheryl.
Shout out to Cheryl.
Say Cheryl. Can't forget my co-host.
Cheryl.
Yeah. She is out of town. She's living her best life. You know, we believe in self-love.
Working.
Yeah, so I'm working, but hey, girl.
I like that. I love the idea of your podcast because, first of all, the big idea of what's happening here is the woman's message, right? Am I right or am I wrong?
Oh,
yeah. You heard?
Anytime you say that, you're right.
You understand? I'm just trying to put it out there. You understand? I'm trying to stay on the right side of the fence. without getting caught.
Carefully.
Without getting caught on the way over.
Tread lightly.
You understand? So without another introduction to the right of me, the woman in red, and I'm saying ours. We're going with ours. The woman in red. She's ridiculously sensational. She has things that she likes to do, wants to do, and some things that nobody knows about, folks. It is the woman in red, Ruth.
Woo!
How are you today?
Awesome.
Awesome?
Hola.
¿Cómo estás?
Hola.
Muy bien, gracias.
¿Y tú?
Caliente.
Oh.
Spicy Sundays. Okay.
Oh.
We should change this to Spicy Sundays.
But this is what's happening today. Tell everybody, Ruth, how you are, who you are, and what your plan is.
To take over the world. That's my plan.
That's always my plan.
World domination.
Yes.
Yes.
Pinky.
What are we going to do? That's right. Pinky in the brain.
Oh,
Okay.
yes.
Aging myself.
Same thing we do every night, Pinky.
That's right.
Gotta take over the
Try
world.
to take over the world. I like that idea.
Yes. So I came to New Jersey Podcasters. I founded a meetup, and I'm new, but I'm learning so much, and I think you guys are going to help me take
Yes.
over the world. We could do it together,
That's right. That's what
and we're going to
for.
put New Jersey on the map.
NJ.
Yes.
NJ.
We will no longer be the sixth borough.
Listen, I am.
Oh my God, is that what they call New Jersey?
Yes,
Girl.
I'm sorry, but you know what the capital of Earth should be anyway.
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn. No, that's all I gotta say. It's
the
gonna.
planet of Brooklyn.
Yes, no, 100%. And I'm not saying that New Jersey hasn't found a spot in my heart. It has, but my soul belongs in Brooklyn. But anyway, Ruth. So tell everybody you joined the NJ Podcasters. Denise, great host. Now, how has this influenced you to want to start your own podcast?
Well, I talked to James earlier today. He was telling me how much he's learned on his own, and he did it on his own, like falling and getting up. And I think that's where Denise and her group comes in, where you don't have to fall and get up. You can learn lessons learned from others, and get so much further along.
What a fantastic idea, right? I mean, people always like to proclaim, and I hate that shit. You're proclaiming like, I'm self-made, and I go, you fucking liar. Anyway, so the idea is the
Kylie Jenner.
Yes, I'd like to do many crazy things to that whole idea of how she got her money. But anyway,
Excuse me, guys.
yeah,
Whoa.
craziness out there. But anyway, the idea is that having a group like the NJ Podcasters, Denise, which is fantastic, it gives you that ability to not make as many mistakes, right? Everybody's going to make some along the way. Everybody's going to have some things that don't always work out. But if you have people who have a podcast or have insight to podcast, how to promote a podcast, all that stuff, it really does give you this idea of success than the latter, which is like, oh my God, what if I fail? Because when you see people who have podcasts and they are doing well and they are progressing, it's a nice way to say, oh yeah, okay, I could see it. It gives you that picture without having all the bad stuff, right? I like that. That's a great idea.
I also feel too like it keeps you motivated because consistency is key. And sometimes with our group, we see some people who have not started a podcast, right? Mm-hmm. And they come in and they're like, you know what? I want to start a podcast.
But how many weeks you got to see them before they do a podcast?
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
That's what happens. Some people are shy. Some people need extra help, right?
Ariel,
Right?
can you be shy and do this?
Listen, no.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're absolutely right. But that's where people come in that you can actually be a peer-to-peer to and give advice and hold them accountable. Because some people are in my group, I hold them accountable. Say, hey, when are you going to start your show? Oh, I'm not sure. Well, next month when I see you, try to get a date, try to get a benchmark and go and let me know. Okay, I'll do my best. And it's up to them.
Right.
We're not here to start your own podcast. This is for you to start your podcast. First of all, with Podcasters in New Jersey, that's what it is. If you want to do your own podcast, we're here to support. We're here to be your peer, and we want to hold you accountable. But don't be scared. It happens. People people have fear sometimes. Sometimes people don't want to hear the way they sound. And I actually suggested to the group.
Great.
And you do. I suggested Chirp to the group. Something very small like Chirp. Remember I told you about that app?
Yes.
2 to 3 minutes to see how you sound, to see if this is for you, because this is not for everyone, guys. Mm-hmm. Right. That's the truth.
And Stephen absolutely loves his own voice.
I do.
Yeah, I heard him.
Right, and he raps, and so you do have to have some kind of comfortable feeling in front of a microphone as well, to even want to do this, right?
Yeah, I think yes, I'm a performer from junior year of high school. I started writing rhymes and rapping.
Yeah.
And then got to college and continued to rap. Got out of college and someone asked me to do poetry. I wasn't a poet. I turned one of my raps into a poem.
Well, rhyming is poetry. We know
Rhyming
that.
is poetry, yeah. I went to a open mic for poets and did that. Then I completely started writing poetry, right, in that format.
Very much like Jim Morrison.
Yep.
Love that. Love.
So that's the writing and performance, but there's a lot of technical things, right?
Mhm.
So coming from being a rapper and someone on stage and holding a mic, I don't have a podcast, but I have had a show, a TV show called Poetry Globe Live. I shot 3 episodes. That's on YouTube.
Nice.
You can look that up and watch
Look it
that.
up. What's it called?
Poetry Globe Live.
Poetry Globe Live,
Yeah,
folks.
on YouTube.
Take a look.
And did that in front of a live audience. And so I have that performance background, right? And I did music management, so I worked in studio with artists that I managed. Never got in the booth with them, but I could have, right? And I knew how to talk them through some things to do.
Right.
Technically, you learn to not cut the mic.
Well, that's from
right?
the experience too.
From
Like
the
a lot of
experience.
people don't get that, right?
Right.
You're not going to get that whole idea of doing a podcast until you actually do one, right?
Right.
So we know John Dewey is one of my favorite philosophers. Don't learn without application. So that's always
Right.
my message to everybody. Learn as much as you can, as by taught by the people who are doing what you want to do, but then you have to go out there and apply what you've learned.
Right.
And if you never go out there and apply what you've learned or what you want to do, you will never know if you can do it.
Yeah.
So very, very important message, right?
You have to know how to hold a mic, have to know what you sound like with headphones on, just the technical aspects, right,
Yeah.
of the equipment that you're going to have to deal with. I think is very important. It's a good piece that could get overlooked in the entertainment part of it, the research of your guests,
Right.
what am I going to talk about, what am I going to name it, just knowing what you're doing with your equipment, coming from a rapper poet background.
Yeah.
There's technical things that you need to know how to hold this mic, right?
But also, you were saying, and this has really stuck with me since you said it. Said, yeah, I have a good voice. I like the way I sound.
Yeah.
And that's important, right? So if you have a podcast and you're doing something, you have to love the podcast. That's number one. And the second part of it is you have to be able to articulate and directly through the microphone. So
Right.
very, very important.
Yeah,
and
articulate,
according
that's
to
a
you,
good word too,
and
yeah.
according to you, you sound like Puff Daddy.
Yes.
No.
See, this is why I get the ahead of time conversations, right? You know I was going to blow him up, right?
Right.
So the idea is I like Puff Daddy.
Yeah.
He's a Brooklyn boy. So I'm thinking you need to tell us how the microphone makes you sound like P. Diddy.
So if you listen to
Well, we're listening. We're waiting for here for some bars.
Oh, bars! You want bars?
I want bars.
Oh my
P.
god! I don't
Diddy
even
This
know
is
if
the
I-
Everything and Nothing podcast.
You're like,
Jesus, I don't even
I
know
need
if I
bars.
remember any
Oh,
rhymes right
come
now,
on now.
man.
That was a long time ago. That
But no, when Diddy came out with his album,
We'll
I
hold
listened
on.
and I said, that sounds like me. Right? So if you go back and listen to his album, and then you listen to some of my stuff, like, oh, is that Puff or is that Steve?
Oh my God.
Well, my rapper name was Scoobs or Scoop Dollar.
Oh, that's cool.
You know?
That's a really cool name.
Yeah. You wanna know how I got it? So
No, I want to hear you kick some bars. That's what I want to hear.
You know you hot when you got lyrics and don't need gimmicks. Rhymes more complex than nuclear physics. Hit you with more flavor than all types of mystic. Lyrically gifted, thoughts are sifted through my mind like sands of time. Through an hourglass, more than an hour pass as you sit and listen to these words I execute with precision. My definition of living. Oh man, this is from 20 years ago.
You
That's
see
all
what
I
I'm
remember.
saying?
Yeah.
But that's what I'm talking about. Having that comfortable feeling in front of a microphone to talk, to perform, and to let people see it. Because people get it right away. Whether it's through your voice or whether it's the video showing you have to be genuine and you have to be sincere
And confidence.
and yes. And if you don't have those things, it will be hard. But if you do, folks, this is the place to be. Ariel, how easy was it for you? You have a great spirit. That's number one.
Thank you.
But how easy or how difficult was it for you to just finally make that plunge?
Plunge into making the podcast. It's still not easy. It's not easy.
Well, you make it look
at
easy.
all.
Well, sound easy.
Right.
But I think it was more so, like you were saying, a lot of brainstorming. I think that's the key that most should take from this who are trying to create a podcast from the creator's aspect, because you need to have a focus. You need to think of, yes, what you're interested in is great, and that's the start, but it's also what other people would maybe take from it. At least that's in my opinion the technique that I used. I approached it with what I like to talk about, but also how can I make this relatable to other people. And then also I kind of what's the word I'm looking for? I kind of made it not so much about me. I was like, yes, I have a following, or yes, I have a voice, but there's in my introduction, I mentioned how I don't really, talk about in my line of work more so social justice issues or hardcore news or things like of that I should be just as passionate about, because it is very much going on, and I want to be that person to kind of close the gap between it being kind of lighthearted news, funny news that you know that gets you through the day, that's lighthearted, but also the things that you do need to hear that you feel are coming from people who are your age. And that was another factor that played in for me. I wanted to talk to people who are like in my age bracket and target it to those people. So I had had a conversation with Cheryl's, who's my now co-host, and we had a mutual conversation. She had already had podcasting experience, so that had helped me out a long way, and she knowing how to work with other people as far as creating topics and what she was passionate about and how we can blend the two.
How important, and we got a question from the panel. All right, let's see what we got here.
The panel.
Yeah, we're broadcasting live. see,
important and stuff.
You know what?
Child, panel.
Listen to this. This is the reason why
Shout out to the panel.
Yeah, this is why I do a live feed, and I say this to everybody is because this is where the genuineness comes from. The idea of having a podcast, whether it's video, audio, both. Half of one, sixth of another. You have to have a certain genuineness, and really we do these things. We want to share our news with people, but mainly we do these things because we want everybody to have a voice. So that's the reason why I do the live feed and with comments. So if somebody has a question, a lot of times we try and answer a question while we're live, and I love that idea. So who's our question from?
It's from Yolanda Williams. Her question is, do you need to have any media or broadcasting background in order to do a podcast?
No.
Denise.
No, I know people.
Hell no.
Again, people think of podcasting automatically goes back to radio. Radio is, people, you do need communications. You did need all these skills to do that. With podcasting, all you need to do is have consistency, your passion, and brainstorm and be organized, and anyone can start a podcast. It's up to you. And it sounds very simple, but the reason that I say this is because this right here has changed everything. You can go on YouTube and learn how to do anything. And if you don't have a peer or you don't have Podcasters of New Jersey, you can learn how to do a podcast just from Google.
Google it.
You don't really need a media.
Google that shit.
Exactly. And
just like you Google somebody, Google how to podcast.
Right. I mean, it's just that simple.
Yes.
The biggest thing is wanting to do it, having the confidence, and executing is the biggest thing.
That's the biggest part.
People
follow through.
There are plenty of crappy podcasts out there.
Yes.
You say crappy?
I said crappy.
Yeah. Shitty.
Right.
Nasty.
Listen,
good.
I still have my mom's
Bad.
answer on. Okay, I practice this on a daily. But yeah, it's a lot of crap.
Yeah.
Or podcasts that are on the rise, I would like to say.
And that are really good, right?
You
But
have a
they're
positive attitude
yeah,
towards it. Okay.
But the point is that because they're consistent and they execute and they do it weekly or
True.
however, they get followers and they start a
Absolutely.
following.
Just like
and
a
they,
whack rapper.
yeah, it's
Right.
just that's how.
There's a lot of
so
whack
that it really plays a part. So
Well, PlayStation 2 is whack.
piggybacking off of Denise, if you think you have something, if you have something to say and you are organized and you want to put it together and you research it and you grab get the gear and equipment, it doesn't take this grand amazing production
Thank you
here
very
that
much.
you
Great
see
studio,
before
by the way.
you, great
Thank you very
studio, but it literally sometimes is a laptop, a
Yes.
mic, and
Yolanda, that's the person who asked the question.
Yolanda.
Yolanda, let me tell you something. The Love Zone USA has been on for quite some time now. I would say 8 years. And when we first started and we're in transition, we did Blog Talk Radio, which was like the basic, not streaming. The quality of sound wasn't the best. And, like piggyback off of what Steve said, you need to know what it sounds like. At that time, podcasting, no one cared. It was about content. And just like that, Yolanda, we got to interview people like Faith Evans, Big Daddy Kane with the phone.
With the phone.
Now, obviously, times have changed. Everything,
smartphone.
exactly, smartphone, right? And the sound quality still, was something that we kind of like grappled with a lot because we're like, my God, we have all this content, and we had good mics, but the sound quality is not the same as a studio or doing Zencaster. It's various different resources that you can do, but at least now that's prominent in the industry, so you won't make the mistake that I made. 1,200 and something episodes in.
Yeah.
But now that we're switching over Libsyn, we clean up the audio, but we still have people. There's a shout out to Fredlin. She's another member of the podcast. She interviewed Tiffany Haddish 3 years ago, and she was on Blog Talk. Manny Faces, who you guys know, came in. He actually did a seminar. He used Blog Talk. These are the mistakes that we made because I had my own show years ago on Ustream. It was called Get Focused Radio, and we had the Sexaholics. So I did something like this, live stream, which was Ustream at the time, 5 hosts, and we made plenty of mistakes. So Yolanda, you're in a good space now not to make the mistakes that we made.
Yes.
If you want to start,
especially the
go
availability
ahead.
of the and I say this a lot, and I know everybody's heard it a million times, is that the World Wide Web is called that because it is the World Wide Web.
Right.
Any information that you think you need to find out, you can Google it, right? But not only that, with the amazing ability, because everybody has internet now, and I want to say everybody, this is a world thing. So you really don't need expensive equipment, you don't need a studio, and you don't need anything except for a smartphone to get started. Mm-hmm. If your true passion is wanting to have a podcast, right? I mean, you don't have to get complicated. So,
start simple.
So Ruth, do you listen to podcasts?
A lot.
So tell me about a podcast you listen to.
Oprah Super Soul.
Oh, that's what's up. Who doesn't love Oprah?
Oh yes.
You see? So now tell us about the podcast.
Oh,
Oprah got
it's
too
very
much going on.
It's very positive, so that's why I listen to it. But I learn how to engage and how listen to and know. Oftentimes I'll click on some podcasts like Discover, you'll discover new things and you click on it and it doesn't grab you. So you just, even by listening, you can learn why something grabbed you or it did not grab you. Even being a listener, and I'm a big podcast listener, and I will almost listen to almost anything for a little bit to see, just to get a taste.
So podcast listening on the way to work, on the way from coming from work to home, from home to work. When do we listen?
That time when I walk my dog, I probably do like 2 hours of listening every day.
Oh wow.
Which is a lot. I know, and I
no, but that's good.
She's the person you need to listen to your podcast.
Yeah.
No, I listen to This American Live.
Oh, what's that?
You never heard of it?
No, come on. If I heard of it, why would I ask you?
Well, Modern Love. I love Modern Love. They're actually doing like a Netflix thing now.
Oh.
Yeah, and it's just random people writing essays of their...
Oh, that's cool shit.
Yeah, so it's like I'm really into what makes people tick. So it's like, oh, that's a thing? People do that, really? So it's just
nice.
Podcasts are a great way to get into people's head and see what's going on out there.
Right.
And there's a podcast for everything. And if you're into anime, if you're into movies, and if you're into kinky stuff, whatever you're into.
I'm definitely into the kinky stuff.
Okay.
Sure.
There is a podcast for everyone.
We're
and
going
if there
to talk
isn't,
about the kinky podcast another time.
Okay.
but if there isn't, then there's room to grow. But there's 7 billion people out there, so there's got to be a topic and a voice for everything.
And do you like the idea of the podcast because they do tend to be more like funneled into that one thing, or are you listening to podcasts because you're just like, hey, I'd like to hear about that? Like, is there a specific reason you listen to a podcast?
Well, there's different time for different things. Like I'll listen to like Trevor. He has a podcast.
Love Trevor.
Right. So so if I want to laugh, or if I'm in a bad mood and I need to laugh out loud, I will listen to him. Or if I am PMSing, I will listen to Modern Love. It depends on what's happening.
Me too.
So, but I think it's more about being able to control it. Where if something is happening, I can pause it.
Oh yeah.
And then come back to it.
Right.
Or if I need to replay it, oh, did I just miss something? Or that was interested.
I want to hear it again.
I want to hear it again.
I like that idea.
Yeah, so
Me too.
I really like podcasts and I like control, so.
Okay. All right.
Sounds like we know which podcast you coming up with soon.
Right.
Something that you can control.
Oh.
You done laid it all out. That's cheeky.
Ariel, you tell me. That's what makes podcasting, I think, so.
You want to talk shit?
Right.
What you got to say?
You know, all of us talk back to the podcast, right? When we listen to podcasts, like, no, you didn't. Shut the fuck up. You didn't just say that, did you? Listen to me. I do it, right? I'm a big fan of Joe Rogan. I like to listen to him. Bill Burr. I like Ben Shapiro. I like a lot of thinking podcasts, right? So that's my idea too, right? So that's why I like the gathering of people, because for me, this podcast, what podcasting does for me is that it allows me to ask the questions because I have an extremely curious mind. So I'm always curious as to why people are doing what they're doing. And that's why I like my podcast, and that's why it's called Everything and Nothing, because I always start out with this idea, whereas like this is about hosting a podcast. Denise hosts, not only does she host or has hosted a podcast, but she hosts a podcast about podcasting. So to me, that was like, oh shit, that's a pretty cool fucking thing. Like, she hosts about hosting. I love that. And then Ariel, I like the idea of the millennial her. So all these things that, and for me, I'm seasoned. Which means I'm older.
I like the term mature.
Yeah, well, that
I like seasoned.
That's what I use for myself.
I'm semi mature. I can't.
You're a little more
claim,
seasoned than me, so
I can't claim the whole maturity thing though. But I like the idea of your podcast because it actually gives us a view from people in your age range,
right.
And I love that idea. So explain. I know everybody out there is curious, right? Millennial her. It's a woman's point of view about what it's like to be a millennial in this day and age.
That is, yep. You done summed it up. That is a great attempt. Great try. But yes. So the Millennial Her podcast is, like I said, comprised of myself and my co-host Charles. We are 2 millennial females who come together to discuss all things, all issues, social justice, entertainment, hot topics. We break our podcast into segments where we start off with the hot topics of what's going on, but it's always tailored to the subject at hand. So, for example, we just released an episode because it's back to school, and we wanted to definitely touch on sexual assault on campuses for collegiate, for those who are pursuing college, to go to college, both male and female. So we discussed Richard Pryor Jr. We discussed, we talked about Jeffrey Epstein, even though it wasn't college related, but it's just the whole idea of sexual assault against women and men. We wanted to talk about those as our topics because even if it is a bit, if it's happened already, for in the mind of a millennial, we're going so fast that we may catch information in real time, but we may not have followed it throughout. So you don't know the fallout, you don't know what's happened, all together. So we sum it up and we give our perspective on it, and we say what you should think about when you hear things like this, or maybe take a second look,
or a sign to look for.
I'm sorry?
A sign, right? Something to look for. Like you're telling these people, like these are the things you should be looking out for.
Should be looking for. Then we try to have, for this one, we obviously had an expert, so we brought someone who can talk to you about sexual violence and campus culture.
And is that something? And is that something? See, and here's another thing we're talking about because we're bringing up podcasting now. Do you often have guests on, or do you and your co-host normally just talk about the topic up at hand?
That's an interesting question because our first season we were not I call it guest heavy. Right. We were more so focused on having our listeners get to know us. Gotcha. And get to know like our chemistry between each other, things that we are interested about, that we want to get people in. But this season 2, we have added more guests because we figured this is piggyback off of my earlier note of season 1, that we tested out, like Denise was saying, a lot of different things, techniques that we liked, that we didn't like Ruth was saying. I wasn't a podcast listener before I was a podcaster. I'm still it's still a journey for me. I'm trying to figure out which podcast I like, but
you like yours?
I do love mine. I love my podcast.
I listen to her podcast.
I love my podcast just from the technical aspect that Steven was talking about earlier, organization, and then finding out what you like. So I realized I like takeaway tips. I like things that I can actually utilize after I've watched, knowing that it's some type of thing you got from it.
A takeaway. That's exactly what it's called.
Not just for comedic relief. That's great to have throughout. So just trying that and listening and then going to Podcasters of New Jersey and then already having the technical aspect from producing, I was able to test out that yes, maybe we should have more guests and those who are equipped to talk on these subjects, not just us researching it, Googling, because that's what we're doing. This is why podcasting, like you were saying, is so easy, because we were researching the tools to tell you as well.
Right. I like that.
That's a good point. And to add to what Ariel's saying, the expert thing. Experts are very, very vital to, I think, the format that she has, because I listened to her show. Very good show, very good sound. I like the fact that they do have segments. It's whatever you want to do, but the format for her work, in comparison to the first season, it was me getting to know both of them. Shout out to the co-host, because I know her co-host. We actually are in grad school together.
Yeah. And girls who are book busy and blessed, getting educated.
Smart.
Wicked smart.
Listening to season 1 and listening to...
How do you like them apples?
Right. Listening to season 1, and I like the episode with the business entrepreneur woman that you had on. I can't pronounce her name. Is
Jadea.
I love that.
Hey, Jadea.
I love that. That episode in comparison to the one that was my favorite for season 1 was the web series person you interviewed, because I saw the highlighting of how you guys broke down the segment, the way you guys asked the questions, and they were expert in both their realms of what you were doing. And it was vital to talk about something that specific and have the person who actually is experienced on it versus you saying, okay, I like this, I like that, and then someone, let's say like Yolanda, for example, someone asks you a certain question and you don't have a correct rebuttal, it could take away from you as a podcaster. And that's what people don't understand.
Because you don't have to be the expert yourself.
No, you can always get one. And I like that.
On there.
That you're doing that.
That's and that great. Just works for us. So
everything's different for everyone.
To answer your question about the guests, I know we kind of went on a tangent, but it was something that we tried. I thought that we both thought that it worked, and we were receiving great feedback, so we thought we'd keep it going.
Yeah, I like that idea. So the first idea, of course, coming out of the gate and saying to yourself, I have a game plan. I want everybody out there to know us and why we're podcasting. And then, like you said, we're going to have topics on our podcast that you do need to have somebody who has a little bit more experience as to that topic. And I agree with that one 100%. That's a fantastic idea. So, Ruth, what would your podcast be about?
Well, I'm honing. I think it will be about current events, but it'll be more about news. Okay. Like actual news.
Like, are we talking on a global scale? Are we talking more like a community scale?
A national scale, probably. You would talk about, especially what's going on with Washington and how many things. How it affects political. I know it affects us, and people don't think about how it trickles down to us.
The eyebrow.
Oh my goodness.
People think that stuff's happening in Washington. It doesn't trickle down to them, and it does. Even
most of us don't think that way. Most of us don't think that. I mean, my personal opinion, I don't know how much it directly affects me because I'm not that involved. It doesn't. But had there be a podcast about maybe how it affects on an individual basis.
But even like the tax, everyone was so happy that their paycheck got bigger, but then they had to pay more money.
The paycheck got bigger?
Oh, yes.
Slightly. I want to work with you.
However, come April, everyone had to pay more, even more, and they felt it then. So it's just things like that, like, oh, we didn't know this was going to happen. They told you, you just weren't listening. That is a great idea for a good podcast.
Should be called They Told You, but you weren't listening.
I'm here with it.
Cut that check.
Wait a minute.
First one's free. The second one will cost you double.
That is a great title.
It's correct,
especially for a podcast.
Yeah, I love that idea.
And if you keep it simple where people understand
in layman's terms,
break it down.
Yeah, because politics will get complicated for people.
Oh my goodness!
But a cheat list, a cheat sheet to politics.
Yeah,
poly cheats.
Poly
cheat sheet.
Yeah,
exactly.
Or Cliff Notes for politics. But remember back in the day, Cliff Notes.
Yes.
Oh my God, I'm telling my age.
And I'm like, yeah.
Cliff Notes are now whatever you could put on this thing.
Right.
That doesn't exist. Just Google it now.
You just Google that shit now.
That's a great idea.
I love that idea.
I'd listen to that.
And Steven, you are.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Yes. Yes. So you are one of the main supporters support team for Denise and her NJ Podcasters. I love that idea. I love
clean
the
up the chairs at the end of the night.
But that is part of the process, which most people don't see. You're behind the scenes.
Yeah,
process. I like that idea.
He's helped me book a lot of guests too.
Yeah.
Yep.
I met Mark through him. Mark Beal. Shout out to Mark Beal. He was one of the guests, and he's
not a big shout out to Mark. He missed this one.
Mark, you should have been here.
You should have been here.
But he actually does help a lot, and he's like, I got this person, I got that. Yeah. I'm like, thank you so much, because the idea of Steven, even though it is kind of but not directly related, but the idea of what you do as far as marketing goes is directly related to just marketing in general. Was what podcasting needs the most, right? Because it's hard to grow. It's hard to grow your viewership, subscribers, and all those things that help.
Child, is it hard?
You see what I'm saying? But having you part of the NJ Podcast group is important, because a lot of people don't know that aspect, right? We all have this thoughts of grandeur when we start a podcast.
Yes.
I mean, and I'm going to be a little selfish right now, because when I had the television show, it was huge. It was big. I had a big television show, had lots of viewers, millions of them every week. And the idea is that we have these thoughts of grandeur when we start a podcast, and like, oh my goodness, this is going to be great. And, oh my God. And everybody's biggest question out there, and don't get caught up on this, is monetizing. It's a bullshit word. It's a made up fucking word. It means nothing.
Oh, man.
You need to
close out like every.
That's my gap. My gap right there is, do not do this if you're looking to make money in the beginning. Do this because you want a voice. Do this because you have something to say and you want people to listen. That is the true. I want to say that's the true genuineness of having a podcast and doing these things, is to voice yourself, is to make sure that you are saying the things that are on your mind and giving others the platform to do the same and to hear what you have to say. Very important. Don't think about the monetization. Don't think about the value of money behind this. If it's going to happen, it will happen. But Steven, that's his business, and that's a great thing. But he also gives you that little glimpse of hope, saying, hey, listen, if you do this little bit of marketing, you may get something. You may get a little bit. And here's a way how to do it. And a lot of people don't know that. And I think that's a great way or a great thing to do for the group, and for just letting people know out there there's a possibility.
Yeah.
Every last session you did that.
I think one of the things for everyone that has started or is looking to start is, and you're talking about marketing, when you're talking about marketing, you're talking about reaching people and growing your brand and growing, getting exposure, right? I think it's important to not be discouraged, because everyone starts from zero, right? When you begin, you have 0 listeners.
Correct.
Right? How fast you grow can depend on a lot of factors.
Right.
But everyone starts from zero. No one starts with a built-in right number of listeners, even if you're on a major network or you're already a major star.
Well, like Conan, right? He's got a big podcast right now, Conan O'Brien.
But when they launched,
they have nobody.
Episode 1,
you have zero.
You're zero,
you have
right?
Zero.
Absolutely.
And that's really my point. Where you're going to go from there is up to you. And talking about the consistency is going to be important. Right, you don't want to put marketing dollars behind something that
is anything
going to be inconsistent with, right?
Right.
So maybe do it for 6 months before you spend any money on marketing, or get a graphics person to make nice flyers for you.
Right.
Start with all the free tools that you can use, right?
On here,
before you spend any money, and make sure that you're going to do this thing seriously and consistently before putting any marketing dollars in.
Right. And we have another question? All right.
Ooh, I like this panel.
Let's do it.
The panel.
Shannon's panel.
Shannon's panel.
Well, this question is from CC Davenport. And what inspired you to begin podcasting? And it's for everybody.
Oh, that's a good one. Listen to me. That's a good one for Ariel. Ariel, what inspired you to start that podcast?
Okay, Cece. Hey, girl.
What up, CC?
What inspired me to do podcasting was literally me wanting to create my own platform and, like Ruth was saying, to be in control of my own content. I feel like I've always worked for other companies, as I've named earlier, and true millennial stance. We don't like to work for anybody, so we want to work for ourselves, and we want to create our own things, and we want to see the fruit of our labor from that. So I felt like it was time that I've always, it was great when I was working for those companies. I was able to develop my voice, but once I realized that I had one and I was confined, I said, I want more. And then also, it's a great way to add to something if you are a part of something else. Like if you are a part of still that company, that you may have some partnership with, but not to the extent that you would like. This is a great way to validate yourself in the field.
100%.
So.
100%. I like the idea of that. That's why I said this gives everybody a platform for their own voice and whatever it is they want to do. Because I love the podcasting idea of this, because my curiosity about people, my genuine curiosity about people grew when I wanted to become a chef. I knew that right away, because cooking for people basically is me saying to somebody, look, I'm giving you a part of me. I'm nourishing my soul by feeding you. So that to me is what this is all about. The journalism part behind this and the wanting to know. And that's the reason for the podcast and a platform to do it. And hosting my own podcast, and what this is all about today, is really giving me it's given me the voice for my listening, if it makes sense to you. So in other words, it gives me an opportunity to meet people like yourselves who are into so many different things, and letting you guys tell me what you do, like who you are. Let me know who you are. And I want everybody else to see it. So I like that idea. I like the platform of giving everybody here at the table their way to express themselves and what they're passionate about. I love that. I really, really enjoy that a lot. And I hope you will too.
Well, another good reason, I think, to have your own podcast, if you find something that I would like to know about this, or I would like to listen about this, there's probably other people with the same interest. Yeah. And now you're creating a platform not only for yourself, but for others to maybe learn or find a community.
Yeah. Right. Thank you for the community. That's what's up right there.
Oh, Stephen, you wanted to?
I want to jump in on that. In building your listenership and, looking at and trying to get to like certain numbers and whatnot, to find success and even monetary success, you don't need 1 million listeners, right? You don't need 500,000 listeners. You need, I'll put a number on it, like 10,000, right? 100,000 listeners that are your fans, that are willing to ride with you, right? That if I just recently got back into into watching race car driving,
which I love too. I have a very good friend that's a Grand Prix driver.
Oh man,
First of all, I've driven in the pace car with Mario Andretti.
This guy is like
and
the most
I'm good friends
interesting man in the world.
I'm good friends with Connor Daly. That whole thing was televised. The thing I did with Mario Andretti and Connor Daly's a good friend of mine. Anyway, so go ahead.
My uncle used to take us. I was maybe 11, 12. He would take us to NASCAR a couple of years in a row. And so I was into it back then, and then not.
That's a great podcast.
Yeah, exactly. That's
throwing that out there.
That's where this is going. I just recently got back into it last year with Formula One documentary on Amazon, and that got me back into like starting to follow some racers and looking at it and just talking about that's could be considered niche, right? Okay,
yeah.
Race car driving. And then you could break that down into however many different worlds within that world. But, if you start a race car podcast, maybe, you get your 100,000 dedicated listeners, right. and you can end up making a living.
Yes.
Right? You can have a nice 6-figure income for the year, just
working for yourself.
Right?
Entrepreneurship. Right? I'm always pushing it.
Yeah, just from a base that really supports you without having, a 7-figure listenership or followership.
Right.
So don't get too caught up in how many people, but what's the quality of your listener, right? Or are they going to ride out with you and buy into your brand, like literally,
or other people
100%.
too. You'd be surprised. People you don't even know who you're. You have those friends that when you first come out with this podcast, like Steven was saying, you have 0 followers, but you have your close knit people.
I don't even rely on them.
That's my exact point. I was just going to say.
Anyone that I know to build as to me, they're the extra.
Right.
Yes.
I want the people that I've never met or never
they will dedicate
meet,
to you,
and that's what some of this.
You want to touch people that are out there, that are involved with something that you're doing, but the immediate, like you said, the friends and the family idea and the people that are following you from the beginning, they're your ride or die, right?
Yeah.
What we're looking for is to reach people further.
Yeah.
A further reach than that, so that everybody out there has the same idea of what this is, right? Mm-hmm. So in other words, if we can get the 10 people on our block to listen, great. But can we get the 10 other people on the other block to listen?
Exactly.
That's what we want to do. And I think that's a driving force, and a great way to do that is marketing. And that was a great thing that you did the time we were at NJ Podcasters. I like the idea of the social media marketing because the value in the dollars is greater than anybody even thinks of.
Yeah.
So the idea is that you could spend $20.
Yeah.
Really spend $20, and it can actually go a long, long way with social media marketing for your podcast.
Yes. I actually, sorry.
She agrees.
I had an idea just now. I mean, not an idea. I was remembering just recently. I'm going to tell you this, Denise, that the Millennial Her podcast had got asked to go to our first New York Fashion Week event. We had actually went earlier this week, actually.
That's what's up.
And
That's
this
awesome.
is from a podcast that
Attended as media, right?
Attended as media.
And we spoke about that. Remember when we had Mark about using your podcast for media to be in places?
Yes.
To be in places, but also it's like helping to continue. So now it's like I get the chance to now think more on a larger scale for the podcast when we're not filming or when we're not shooting episodes. Maybe we can continue to do this. And this is from a relationship that was
being a host for an event. You won a competition. You won a competition that allowed you to be a host of that event.
Yes, the Newark International Film Festival that just passed also. I was a host, the red carpet host for that. So it's like opportunities, and I'm always obviously telling people about the Millennial Her podcast just from using my notoriety to build, but also to get more knowledge from other people who are seasoned in the field as well.
Right.
And this is from garnering relationships, like Steven was saying, that I didn't know. It was a publicist who I was just reached out to. She had started building her clientele, and I'm like, hey, if you need anything, definitely let us know. She probably didn't think we would show up, and now she's looking to book us with her other clients for interviews. See? So it's like fostering relationships.
That's great.
Well, that's the idea, right, Denise? You've given the idea to people about hosting, right? So you being a host, telling to other people out there you should be a host. You should be a host. And then by having the podcast, opening up these opportunities to become a host for other events. That is a great thing.
And that's a way to monetize.
Yeah.
Yep. Let me
clear that up. If you're not attending as media per se, but as host, it's a way to monetize based on your podcast.
Based on
brand.
your podcast.
I'm not telling you to charge,
no.
to attend as media. That's not really how media works. Right. So just want to clear that.
Yeah, but some people will try it.
They'd rather you not even attend if you're going to do that.
Yeah, but it's also a good idea, right? So when we talk about monetization too, when it comes to a podcast, like everybody's always thinking, "Oh, I want somebody to pay me to do my podcast." I'm like, "Yeah, good fucking luck with that." And then here's the lesson learned. It ain't happening.
There's 650,000 podcasts as of I think the end of 2018 December.
Yes, thank you.
We don't
very
even.
much.
It's a lot. If you're not consistent, if you're not passionate, you don't love this, you're not gonna make it.
Yeah.
And the people who have been monetized, for example, that are doing 70,000 or 100,000 downloads. There's our companies that do advertisement like Midroll and Podcorn now that I posted. They do not want to pay you unless you have, I think, is between 15 to 50,000 downloads per episode.
They want to know that your business is already like
launched,
right?
Done. Your
like your
brand is
podcast
done.
is like almost signed, still delivered,
and they're paying you
bigger back
less too, similar to how the YouTube revenue for the amount of downloads and viewerships and things like that. So I mean, sponsorships could be, you can make more money on a smaller and scale than having to, stress yourself out to hit these downloads. Because I see that in a lot of pages that I have. A lot of people want to have these downloads, and that's great. Absolutely, but if you're there for that, it's gonna really not make you like it
and
anymore.
That's what I was saying
and
before.
That's what you were saying, exactly.
If you're doing this in the beginning because you think you're going to be rich and famous, don't do this. Don't waste your time, and don't waste your listeners' time. That's the biggest thing for me, right? So the idea,
that's good.
Consistency, right? So the idea is that you're going to start a podcast and maybe, 10, 20 people get involved really quick and they like it, and all of a sudden you have this consistent following of whatever it is, 100 people, and then all of a sudden, I ain't doing that, I ain't make no money, this is tough, I can't do this every week, it's too much work, and then all of a sudden you don't do it anymore. I'm like, don't waste your listeners' time. That's the biggest thing for me. So that, the idea of the monetization can come in smaller spurts. So the idea of like maybe somebody hiring and they listen to your podcast like, hey, wait, I would love for you to come MC an event for me or host a podcast that I want to do. That's a way to make money doing this. It doesn't always have to come from the idea of like getting monetized or having sponsors or people giving you money to do this. It can come in other ways. So you can get noticed and do a gig, like a side gig or something, and before you know it, you're making money doing this.
And we're not talking that, we're not saying like, blah, we hate money. No, that's not. Of course, that's not. Everybody needs money to live. We want money.
Cut the check.
We want the check right now. But
you can Venmo that shit to me.
Cash app.
But
word, I got all the apps.
You can throw cash in the air now and it'll appear back at my house.
Well, I got Zelle now, PayPal.
It's so many ways to get paid. But what we're saying is that shouldn't be your only go-to for doing a podcast. Shout out to the Women of Color podcasters and Danielle for making that group. They're over 1,500 members.
They have a great.
They started off of being rejected at Spotify and not having a place and a voice.
Rejected?
Not rejected, but it wasn't rejected. It wasn't that there was a space for women like them. So what happens with that? They used their voice and they made it, and there's so many wonderful women doing great things.
It's on Facebook, the Women of Color
podcasters. They do a lot of engagement, a lot of back and forth, and they're very supportive. The reason I shout them out is because that's a lot of the questions they talk about: monetizations, different sponsorships, and a lot of them,
But you have to go get them too, right? Let's make that clear, Steve. Let's make that clear to people out there. This doesn't happen because all of a sudden somebody's like, "Hey, I saw your podcast and I want to give you money now." You have to do some legwork. So you have to go after it. You have to target the people you would like to have sponsor your podcast. That's important too. But your audience is going to really dictate where your sponsorships come from, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
absolutely. And we have the tools. You have the tools, in these platforms to know exactly who your audience is, where they are. So when you go have these conversations, back when I was doing management, I would tell my team, listen, how we do it, we go where they are. If we need to meet someone from Def Jam, we're going to go to a Def Jam event. If we're looking to get into Sony, we're going to go to some party that Sony is throwing. Or, we're going to look through our contacts and see who do we know that knows someone at Sony, right? So we would just go where they are. And I think that's something that, from a networking standpoint and meeting people in the business that you're in that matter to you standpoint is that, that isn't just a music thing. That's, across the board. Get off your ass and go where they are.
And do the research and be ready for the conversation.
Podcasters in New Jersey is always talking about upcoming events is one of the pieces every month, where podcasters and people that want to meet podcasters, right? Some of these potential sponsors congregate, go, take a little road trip down a few states away from where you are and go to one of these podcaster conferences or summits or whatnot and meet some of the people that you need to meet. Likely there might be some potential people in there that can cut you a check for what you do, right? But when you go talk to them, you can have a informed conversation with them about who your listeners are, where do you reach, how much you've grown month over month from January to June, right? And show them from the jump that what you're talking about, and all of that information is accessible in the tools that we're using.
Yes, and the thing is that a lot of people think this happens mysteriously, and it doesn't. No. The idea of
I will vouch for that.
Right? The idea of television, we know it's becoming a dinosaur. The idea of the podcast and having digital content is so important nowadays, right? So you don't necessarily, the approach to get those things, those sponsorships and all that is done very differently now.
Yeah, the game changed.
It has changed 100% down the line. So in other words, if you can't just you can't go to an NJ podcast, not NJ Podcasters, but a podcasting group thing where there may be sponsors looking to get involved in podcasts to give money.
Be a good idea.
And you can't just go to them, hey, can you give me some money to do a podcast?
Nah,
no, you have to have an intelligent conversation. You have to have some type of business plan. What everybody was thinking about 10 years ago, 5 years ago, even 3 years ago, I want to go even as close as 2 years ago, where podcasting was like a hobby. Nah, it's not. It's where people get their information from now.
Right.
It's how news is being broadcasted, right? You listen for that reason.
Everybody has a podcast. Right, everybody now. It's all about the content.
Even the major brands and major television players like HBO, CBS, ABC, they have podcasts. They all have they've gotten hip in the last few years.
Or the feel of it, or the skeleton of it.
Yes.
They're trying to bring back to television now to get, like how you said it was dying, to get people back watching television.
Right, through the podcast.
Through podcast format.
Part of the business model now is if you're, I can damn sure see Shannon, with his consistency and investing into himself and his brand and his show. Look at the setup. He's invested into it. That in whatever amount of time, the business model is becoming. If you do those things that Shannon's doing, it could lead to your podcast on television, right?
Easily
or a show branded
Easily.
to you by a major network or a major digital platform, right?
You heard this? Major network?
Or
I've
cable
done that
network,
already.
right?
We know that, right?
Right. Which so
Major?
you'll be no.
This is major for me.
That's right.
Okay, but when they come knocking, right? It's your decision if you want to take that call or not.
Right.
But for those that haven't, right, that haven't gotten to the heights you've gotten to and might be looking for that, the point is that the business model, it's clearly there that if you do this, it can lead to that, right? Similar to comedians, the business model has become stand-up comedians getting game shows.
Correct.
Right?
Or,
right? And hosting game shows.
Stand-up comics right now are very popular.
Yeah, so it's just the idea of
follow the model,
seeing the trend of what the business model has become.
Also, too, to your point, and we've spoken about this before, is leverage. Now you can leverage
absolutely
that model that you just created to whatever you want.
You can decide if you want to take that deal or not.
That was the idea of how to get sponsorships. I was told, if that is what you want. It's not
Have
about
leverage.
piggybacking off of what you said, Shannon. It's not about thinking they're going to do something for you.
Right.
You know, it's about, this is what I have. This is how dope we are, and this is what I can offer to you, and you can in exchange for
money.
this. And you have it, so you're not afraid to really spend it.
Yes.
It's just more so about they want to make sure they're spending it on the right.
Correct. 100%.
And that's happened.
Right.
So, Ruth, something you want to see as a sidebar, just expression, or do you think maybe could, potentially become some kind of career?
I would love to do it all the time, and actually, the schedule, you work on your own pace and doing something you love, and to control your whatever you're working on and your thoughts and how you put it out there to the world.
Yeah.
So it'll be awesome to do that.
Yeah, because a lot of people, what's funny, right? I know we all get this, right? So you're going to podcast, how are you going to make money? And I say, well, I'm not doing this originally to make money. This isn't my the base of how I have an income. We all do that in the beginning, right? Because the idea is that to pay for all this that we do, you have to have some kind of income of some kind. But nowadays in college, they teach this. They teach this.
They are teaching it.
They teach this. So out there, I'm telling you, all you young adults who are coming up and going to school and looking for careers and stuff like that, social media, podcasting, broadcasting.
Chile.
Yes. So, it is.
Gaming. They teach gaming.
Yes, they teach video gaming. They teach, they teach all these things now.
I knew it was over once they taught a Beyonce class.
Yeah. What? I took that class. But that's what's up. I truly, first of all, my first love is curiosity. My second is change. I am the ultimate embracer of change. I love the way things evolve. I love the fact that things don't always stay the same. That everybody has their time and place for everything to do what it is they want to do when they want to do it. And in this day and age, it's all possible. And I say that through technology.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm like I said, seasoned before, but the idea that I've always embraced the idea of change all the time.
Yes.
It's why it's easy for me to accept these things nowadays, right? Like I don't just harp on my kids about the cell phone use. I harp on everybody. So it's like the idea is that I understand this now is part of us. This belongs to us. And the idea of technology and having it at hand at all times is very important to us. And that's why I love the podcast. Having a podcast gives you the ability to speak anytime you want. And it has the ability to be heard 24 hours a day, 7 days a week around the entire world.
Yeah.
So
that's what I'm trying to
sit and think about that, folks. If you're not thinking about podcasting and you're not thinking about having some kind of social media presence, you will not be seen. You will not be heard. What do you think?
I think that's very true.
Accurate.
Agreed.
See.
Especially if you're trying to create.
That's a muy bueno. That's my Spanish lesson for today. Now listen to me. I end my podcast the same way all the time. First thing I want to do is say thank you to everybody sitting at this table. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with everybody out there. Very, very important, and one last time, Denise, where can they find the NJ Podcasters?
Podcasters of New Jersey is on Facebook, just Podcasters of NJ. New Jersey. And we're on Instagram, Podcasters of NJ. You can follow us. And my meetup is on meetup.com. It's Podcasters of New Jersey on Meetup.
Steven, what's your social media?
My personal social media, if you want to get to know me better, is S. Longsworth. It's my first initial and last name, S. Longsworth. And you can also follow Scriptertainment on Instagram and check out the site and download the app.
That's what's up right there.
Steven, where are you from?
I am from
originally born. That's That's all I want to know.
Born in Belize, raised
That's what's
in
up.
East Orange, migrated to Patterson.
All right, all
Okay.
right.
Now a West Orange guy back in Oranges.
Okay,
what's up.
sounds good. I was
Jersey
alright.
holla.
So,
Jersey. All of these people from Jersey or live in
Jersey.
Jersey. Okay, just wanted to put that out there.
yeah, I'm not from Jersey.
Oh well, we'll accept you.
Thank you.
He is now.
We'll accept you.
You
Yeah,
are. He is
that's
now.
We'll accept you.
So, Ariel, where can they find you?
You can follow me at Ariel ARIELLE _Ryan RYAN. That is my personal social media, where you can literally ask me about more about the podcast. If you, for your live listeners who want to know more about how to jumpstart one, I'm more than happy to answer any questions. I do accept message requests and I do respond. As far as the podcast, it's the Millennial Her podcast. I spelled it earlier, THEMILLENNIHER podcast, and
remember
that's
all
on
of that.
Instagram because it's not hard.
Yeah,
That's
because
why I
it's
can
hers.
remember it. And that is a podcast that I, like I said, share with my co-host Cheryl. Hey Cheryl.
What's up, Cheryl? Ruth, do you have a social media you want to share with anybody?
Yes,
All right.
Instagram and Facebook is Ruth RUTH Danessa DANESSA.
Nice. And you will be starting a podcast, I hope, soon.
Me too.
And everybody out there knows how to find me. I'm your boy from Brooklyn, Shannon Ambrosio, and you know where to look for me. All you got to do is come to my front window and say, "Hey, Shannon, what are you doing?" And I may come outside. I may not. It depends. But we all know how I end my podcast here. And I love the idea of giving good fortune to people. So we're going to do my fortune cookie deal.
Ooh, fortune cookie deal.
So we're going to take the...
It's actually a fortune cookie.
Yes.
we take the fortune cookies, right? So we have 3, there's 5 of us, right?
Do we get to eat it?
Yeah, if you like. So it's 3, 4, 5, right? So everybody, don't pass them out. Everybody take one. Take one. Don't
Can
open
you
it.
just pass me
Yeah.
one, please? Thank you very
Okay.
much.
All right. So don't open them.
Okay.
You take them. You pass them to the right.
Oh.
You're giving your good fortune away to your right. The other right.
The other rights.
She didn't get the rights right. So she's actually technically all lefts. So now you open them.
3 lefts make a right, by the way.
Yeah, something like that. 4 lefts make a circle. 4 lefts make a square.
There you go.
Oh, I like this game.
I have a shout out. Happy birthday to my brother. Shout out to my brother. Today's his birthday.
Oh,
What up, bro?
happy birthday.
Hashtag HBD. Oh. I didn't wait for the next. Oh,
No,
open?
Yeah.
Okay.
Open. And we'll work it around the room. So Denise, let's hear what your fortune is.
I'm eating the cookie already.
No.
Seize every second of your life and savor it.
Oh, that's what's up right there.
Ooh,
Holy
savor.
shit.
Be present.
That's what's up right there. Savor all the moments. Like this one.
Yes, it's a great moment.
All right. Steven, what do you got for us?
Oh, I'm next. I thought we were going right. Oh, man. Thank you for this great fortune, Ariel.
Oh, you're welcome.
That you
What
passed
is
to
it?
me on your left, right.
The shade.
She's
You
like,
will
"Blah,
succeed
blah,
in
blah."
making a small fortune by investing in a business project. That sounds so like me.
That's
This
what's
is
up right
for
there.
me. Can I read the lucky numbers? 1.
No.
Oh, man.
You want to share your lucky numbers?
I know,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It
Yeah.
would never be me.
Why? What's gonna happen?
No,
These are the
Oh.
letters that people be
Well,
like
1
doing
8,
for
right? And the
lottery
18th is my
stuff.
birthday, so that's
Okay,
cool.
so you got good numbers.
Yeah.
Wait, when's your birthday?
The 18th
Uh,
of November.
Oh,
so it's
Scorpio
coming up.
season.
Scorpio.
Yeah.
You heard.
okay.
All right, Ariel, talk to us.
Okay. Your present plans are going to succeed. Thanks,
Wow.
Ruth. You heard it here, folks. So follow me now
Yeah, you heard it right here.
before I blow up.
On the Everything and Nothing podcast.
Done.
You ready? She blew the mic up,
Ears
though,
blew
Jay.
up.
Yeah, she did. Do that, Rob.
I'm sorry.
Root, kick it to us.
You have the ability to sense and know higher truth.
I can see that.
For Ruth.
I can
That's
see
the
that.
truth. That's the truth.
That's
I can see that.
right.
Hashtag Ruth Truth.
Bruce Truth. That's
That's
another
the truth.
good
That's
one.
another one.
That's another good
That's
name.
the truth, Ruth.
That's another
one.
good name for a podcast. Roots Truths.
Brainstorming here.
Oh, listen to me. That's what we do. We
Brainstorm.
Listen, when you got a big brain, you got to let it get out somewhere. You know what I mean? Otherwise, it drips out of your ears. I hate when that happens. Yeah, heard? All right. So here we go. consolidate rather than expand business projects in the near future.
Dang.
Which is great.
Focus.
Yeah, focus.
That's what
I
you're
like
doing.
that. And you know what's funny? This is literally all I've been focusing on for the last couple of months. And I'm only 2 months. I'm only a month and a half away from being finished completely with the build of the studio.
Very nice.
So I'm excited about that. And the idea of consolidating the business plan is making sure that I'm focusing on my podcast and the podcast studio. So eventually what my goal is here too is to have this fly that just, you see the fly? Yo, that guy was almost like a fucking kamikaze. He was coming right for my eyeball. I don't know how that bastard got in here. But anyway, we're going to fucking raid his ass later with the spray. I'll tell
He
you
want
that
his own
much.
podcast.
Yeah, he's going to have his own podcast. He's going to be called The Walk when I get done with him. I'm going to pluck his wings off. But the idea... yeah, I get a little fishy sometimes. But the idea, of course, is my hopes is to have the podcast studio build out finished soon, and this podcast will be available to rent out for people who would like to start a podcast.
Awesome.
And any other, studio venture that can be done here in the studio. This will be a full-fledged studio to do anything, basically commercials, television. You need a set for a television show. This will be it. Or just a podcast, just a space to podcast.
CTC.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that.
Great.
But listen to me, folks. I say this because I say it from the heart, and I say it often. Speak. Be heard. Let people see you. Let them know how you feel about things. Do not be silent. Words are powerful. They need to be listened to by everybody. Us as individuals, nowadays, we have a way to express ourselves, whether it be through a podcast, whether it be through social media, or whether it be outside your back window or your front window. Yell it as loud as you fucking can. Make sure they understand who you are, where you are, and where you're going. In no moment in time, be still and never be silent, folks. This is the Everything and Nothing podcast. I'm your boy from Brooklyn, Shannon Ambrosio. Every day is a good day, folks. And I'm telling you, if you give a smile, you gonna get a smile. Give a bunch of them smiles out there, folks. This is the Everything and Nothing podcast, and thank you all for being part of this.
Thank
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Yes.